Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast. If our conversations inspire you, help us to keep the momentum going. Like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen. Your support fuels every single one of those boundary-breaking conversations. So let's just keep exploring those together. Today, my guest is Rowan Bo, a meditation instructor, art therapist, and lifelong extraterrestrial contactee from Brisbane. Since age 8, she's had continuous encounters with multiple alien species across the globe. Now a leading disclosure advocate, Rowan shares her experiences on stage, in interviews, and through her Facebook platform UFO/UAP Disclosure Australia. She connects experiencers through community meetups and has just released her book, The Travelers, an experiencer's guide to extraterrestrial disclosure, chronicling over 40 years of extraordinary ET contact and offering guidance to others on similar journeys. How's it going?
Hi, everybody. Nice to tune in today or tonight. I'm from Brisbane, Australia, and it's a bit the next day from where it is, where Jahan is, over in Barbados. Is it Barbados where you are?
Yeah, that's where I am.
It's amazing to just have so many people interested in my book from all around the world. So I've had lots of interviews recently about it, and it seems to be going really well in the UFO book. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about that.
Let's jump right into it. Tell me about your very first experience that you can remember, of course.
I was getting contact from age 8 in Taree, New South Wales of Australia, and I was getting repeated contact with beings that I describe as short, dark hooded beings. I don't know where they're from because I don't recall us going on any kind of spacecraft or anything like that. We would just go somewhere not in my room. So they would come and collect me late at night and they would take me somewhere else. And they would show me time, how they could manipulate time. So time would go either really, really fast, or time would go either really, really slow. They were able to manipulate time. I'm pretty sure they just did it with their will alone. So they were actually showing me at age 8 that what we would call our reality isn't real, if you know what I mean. We don't know really what reality is at age 8. So I was already getting shown this sort of stuff. And then the other thing that they would do when they would put me back into my bed, because I was awake this whole time, was then they would make the room spin around from top to bottom really, really fast. So the room would just rotate of its own, on its own. So I'd be laying in bed and the room would go round and round and round and round and round so fast, and it was really, really scary. So I don't know what they were proving, except they were showing me that reality is flexible and reality can be manipulated. So I don't know how we apply that in our world right now, but they were showing me that at age 8.
That's so interesting, because that thing that we call reality is both experiential and also a projection of the mind. And yet, when it comes to these phenomenon, it kind of breaks down into even further levels that are so even more unexplainable than the first two categories I just mentioned. How do you go on at 8 years old realizing that you were an experiencer, and like this wasn't just some kind of a strange phenomenon that was happening?
Well, this was, like I say, when I was awake. So when I would go to bed, I knew that these beings, when they were going to come, I knew that they were going to come. So maybe I had premonition or precognition, or maybe they actually suggested that I would be contacted that night. Of course, I would tell my family about it, but they didn't really believe me, because it's really difficult to believe that sort of stuff. You know, it's not an everyday thing, and there was nothing in our reality that told us that this sort of stuff would happen. I mean, the movie E.T. came out, and the movie Close Encounters came out, but they were nothing like I'd seen, and I didn't even know that there was such a thing as extraterrestrials when I was 8, and it wasn't anything anybody talked about. So I remember Mum got me a book, and I thought this was going to be my guidebook, and I was really happy and excited about Mum getting me a book, and I was like, great, they're the beings on the front of the book. And it was Morris Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are, because they had these beings on the front of that book, like monsters. So I thought that was actually a guidebook to help me, but it wasn't a guidebook at all. So later in life, that's why I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to write my own guidebook to help other people, because I didn't have a guidebook for me. No one was talking about this stuff. And so I would have to go to school. Nobody talked about anything then. I'd be awake all night. I'd be stressed out. I'd struggle with school. And that was that. So that finished probably around age 9, I'd say. This went on multiple times. And one of the new memories that came back was me walking in the kitchen when I was like 8 or 9. And I was walking like this. And Mum's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, that's how they walked. I was walking like they walked, because we would all just stomp along. They're like little gnomes, stomp along together. So I'd be with these 3 gnomes or whatever they were. So, I mean, Whitley Strieber has them in his book. He calls them the Blue Doctors. There's loads of other contactees in the world who've experienced these short, dark hooded guys. I thought that they were like men. I didn't think that they were anything else. But like I said, I don't remember going anywhere but just outside of my bedroom, away from my bedroom. So I don't know where we went to.
It's interesting because it sounds like the same beings that Misha Johnson described to me. She called them the Ewoks, and they have these little hoods on too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So that Morris Sendak book, there's one that's got like hair. It doesn't have horns. This particular picture on the front of Morris Sendak's Where the Wild Things book is. And I thought that was it, because they've got these big mouths, they've got this dark skin, like leathery skin. Other people who have had contact call them gorilla faces. So that's kind of like gorilla skin, dark sort of skin. So yeah, I haven't seen them ever since then. So, but I have had contact with 2 other species of beings since then. So I had contact with the tall blondes, and I had years of contact with who I call the grey lady. So looks like Skinny Bob. That's exactly what my ones look like. Other ones look different, like on the front of Whitley Strieber's book. That doesn't look anything like what I saw. Definitely Skinny Bob. I was like, oh my gosh, that's her. I thought it was her, and I think Skinny Bob is a female. I feel.
Well, that definitely explains why you like Subterranean Homesick Alien so much, because the lyrics are, I tell all my friends, but they'd never believe me. Okay? They think I'd find
exactly. And that was the first. I know. That's exactly my life. I was like, oh my gosh. And another part of the book that I've just finished writing about was, Jamiroquai. He had a song called Cosmic Girl, and I thought that was about me. I'm like, yes, I'm the cosmic girl. I've been in space. I knew I'd been in space from that book. I was traveling in space, and I was like, I know this. This is deep in my heart. I know I've been in outer space. And this was back in 96, I think that song came out. So that was just in my own little private world. I had no one else to talk to about these things, like I said. So those 2 songs were what I was just talking about recently. I actually had new memories come back from listening to some of that music back in the day. Yeah.
In many ways, music has changed drastically for the purpose of moving away from those topics, because you mentioned Jamiroquai, and he said a lot of stuff that I don't think you would be allowed to talk about right now, honestly. There's so much like things that it's almost like he was seeing the future, or he would pull things from the ether and just say stuff that was very esoteric. And I think a lot of mainstream consumers probably missed those things, but there might be people now that are like, oh, I have to go back and listen to that and see exactly, because I might be more awake now and receptive to what he's saying, you know?
Yeah, and he even talked about frequency and quasars and I don't even know, you know, a connection and just people being from another place. And, you know, that song, Homesick Alien, what is it, Subterranean? I can't remember the exact way that it's Homesick Subterranean Alien or one of them, from Radiohead. I was like, this guy's been up there. How would he know how it feels otherwise? How would he know exactly how it feels, the loneliness that you feel when you're a contactee? Because just there's nobody to talk to and people shut you off and people shut you down and people call you crazy. And just it's only now that the community sort of opened up now with the internet and my own community online. So I've got my own Facebook page. I just had to start my own because I thought no one's talking about this sort of stuff in Australia. So I just thought, well, I might as well be the girl then. I might as well be the one that starts all this off. So I started, and, you know, we're getting 300 new members a week. So ever since the new US Congress hearings, it's like everyone's just all of a sudden gotten an interest in it, and we're having 300 new members a week. I used to get like 5 or 6, you know, so now it's just growing exponentially. It's pretty amazing. The times come where people now should be starting to talk about this stuff.
It is pretty amazing. So let me ask you this. Do you feel as though your intention to write this book has been fueled by not just the experiences, but perhaps the ET species themselves were pushing you on an unconscious level?
Yeah.
And why do you think it took you that long to write the book?
Actually, well, I didn't think I was special. I'm not saying I'm special now, but I didn't think that my experiences were special because they'd always been belittled and put down by everybody. And I just assumed that maybe it wasn't significant because everyone always told me they didn't exist. So I was constantly questioning myself since age 8 about this stuff. So my next experience was when I was 20, I think 19 or 20. And would you mind me talking about that now? Because then you'll see how mind-blowing this is. When I was living in Noosa, so I was only young. I didn't even have my driver's license. So I was outside at 9 o'clock at night and I was hanging washing on the line. I'd forgotten to do it. It was dark. I was in my pajamas and I saw an orb come down out of the sky, like a light, just coming down and drifting down. And I thought, that's a min-min light. That's what we have in Australia, what we call min-min lights. And people in the outback report them coming like flying along next to their car or kind of semi-interacting with people. So that's the only reference that I had. So I thought it was a min-min light. So this round orb of light, so it was a solid orb, came down and it was interacting with me. So it was about maybe 5 foot in front of my face and it was drifting backwards and forwards. And I thought, I wonder if it's conscious. So it felt like it had a consciousness and sort of like playing with me a little bit. And then out of the blue, sort of, it just came flying at my face and hit me in the face. And then I found myself floating upwards. And when I looked up, I saw a rectangular UFO. And it wasn't massive. It was about the size of a small bus and shape. And it had like red grill, something glowing underneath, glowing hot, because you could see the heat waves coming off it. And I was floating upwards. And then I heard a voice coming out of the craft telepathically, don't look down, look up, don't look down, look up. So when I was going up into the craft, I was trying to pay attention and trying to say to myself, right, I have to remember every little thing that I see, because this is significant. This thing's in the like 1990, so I didn't know anything existed about this, and I thought this is definitely not human tech. This is a UFO and ET tech. So I was floating up, and I came up into their deck, and there were 4 tall blondes there, so about 2 meters tall, ice blue eyes, wearing blue suits, long blonde hair, 2 males and 2 females. And the female said to me, because I didn't know what to do. I was like, do I scream and shout, or do I represent the Earth as the first person these people have come across? You know what I mean? So I acted like that second choice. I had to actually make a choice. I was like, I could either just be a screaming banshee person, or I could be the best person I could muster within myself. So that was my choice. I made that choice. So I stepped forward. I didn't know what I was going to say, but what blasted out of my mouth was greetings, welcome to planet Earth, because I didn't even know what else to say. Ridiculous. And then one of the women stepped forward, and I thought, she's the commander. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as female commanders back in the 90s as well. I was like, wow, what kind of civilization is this? So she stepped forward and she said to me, if you touch us, it will kill you. And I was like, holy moly. So that was very strange. So again, I was like, right, well, maybe I should be scared and not just too kind of blasé about this. So then one of the tall blonde males stepped forward and he said, do you want to fly the craft? We want to invite you to fly the craft, was his exact words. And another memory that's come back is that they wanted to test, I'm assuming like my DNA or something I had to do with me. And if I would be able to fly the craft, that means I had that, say, DNA. So it's like, okay, so we went across to 2 white swivel seats in the craft. And I went onto the left-hand swivel seat. So I sat in there and he was showing me how to do, I assume it was just putting my hand onto like a touch screen. So he told me to do that. And I was like, oh, right, the craft's not moving. End of story. I don't have this, whatever it was that they were looking for or believed that I had. And he said, yes, the craft's moving. And I'm like, no, it isn't. I can't feel anything. And he said, yeah, you got to stand up and look outside the viewing screen and you'll see the ground moving underneath. So I was able to stand up because I was so short. It's only 5 foot. And he was 6 or 7 foot or something. So he could see sitting down at the ground. I had to stand up and lean over and look down. And I could see the ground moving underneath us, all fences and farms and everything. So then he said, well, you think that's fast? This is fast. So we swapped seats, and then he started to fly so fast that all of the ground was just flying past us. You know what I mean? Like you could see us going so fast that I didn't have any reference for where we were going. And after it was ages, I thought he was showing me, and then I realised he's not showing me, that they're abducting me, sort of thing. And anyway, I leaned over and I reached for his top of his arm here, and I said, okay, excuse me, but can we go back now? So I didn't die when I touched them, which is good. And then he said, yes, but first we're going to put an implant in the back of your neck. So then the 2 tall blonde females came over, and they basically had to, I'm going to say the word manipulate me or convince me, or I had to give my consent to get this implant in the back of my neck for whatever reason, which I can't remember the exact reasons. And then I laid on like a bench or table wherever we went to, and then I woke up in my bed. And I was like, holy, did I get an implant? And I thought, I didn't feel any shaving under my hair. But I do have a lump here, which I believe I actually had an implant by the short, dark, hooded guys from back when I was 8. So I actually remembered things that they'd been talking about. So when I was laying there in my bed in the morning time, it was already morning, I thought, oh, hang on. They asked me, I was able to ask them some questions. So I thought I had asked them, where are you from? And they said, we're travellers. And I said, guess what star system are you from? And they said, we're travellers again. So that's why I've named the book The Travellers. And then I said, am I going to see you again? And they said, yeah, we'll see you again. So the next day, that day, I was looking out for them the whole day at work. I was expecting them to come back that day. So, if this was a dream, just saying, why would I look for people in a dream? And anyway, when I'd woken up that morning, I went upstairs and turned the radio on, and there was a UFO reported that night in my town. And it wasn't a rectangular one that I'd seen. It was a long green cylindrical, or two long green cylindrical fluorescent lights, they called them, like same shape as a fluorescent light. And they either went out on the other side of the ocean or into the ocean. And so a few years later, I actually went to Africa and I saw two of those green cylindrical craft in Africa a week apart. I believe they were following me in Africa. Another time I went to the UK and there was a craft, a different shaped craft, a disc-shaped craft following above my car the whole way from London to Scotland. And in that case, it was two round circles of lights with the lights going round one way and then the other lights going the other way and pulsating in and out. And that was above our car for hours. So, yeah, maybe they did give me the implant and they were able to find me. And then when I came back from overseas, I started to have experiences with the grey lady. So in this case, there would be a black triangle in spacecraft involved with their visits. And I had them for about 20 years with the grey lady. So, yeah, I guess I have an implant. They follow me around the place. And when you asked previously about had I had guidance in my book, yeah, I have had conscious guidance with writing my book and the need to get the book out there, because there's a need clearly that people need to know what's going on and are these benevolent. Mine were benevolent. I'm sure that there's lots and lots of different species interacting with humanity as well. So that's my experiences in a nutshell, basically.
I guess you just said it, but why you? Why little old Ro from, Brisbane?
Yeah.
Why you?
I wish I could tell you. I wish that there was an answer. One of the things that I've thought of is that I remember my past lives, and I remember being alive in between lives. And I remember my first memory in this life was when I was 6 weeks old. So it may be that I remember things, and maybe other people have had contact, but they don't remember it. Or maybe that's why they've contacted me, because I remember a continual memory from my past lives to midlife to like now. So, yeah, I remember a lot of memories from when I was young, whereas a lot of people don't remember, like pre-10, whereas I remember from 6 weeks old. So that's maybe a reason there.
I suppose that could be a reason, a good one, if any.
Yeah.
Well, I touch on this topic with others as well, and I'm just looking for the best answer to it, I guess, that I can get. Because we have this word disclosure that gets thrown around frivolously. But what's your definition of it?
Disclosure, if people actually paid attention, has already happened. If you just read anything, people are telling you that they're here. So I don't know where why they think disclosure hasn't already happened, because it's been happening really the whole time. I mean, we know Roswell happened. We know the 1933 crash in Italy happened. We know that there were Foo Fighters. We know that there were flying discs. We know all this stuff. I don't know why we're getting convinced that it hasn't already happened. I think that's a psyop in itself. And when I say it, there's not one species. There's not one spaceship. There's so many things interacting with us. Like we've said, spirits or, entities that can talk to us, cryptids, stuff that's coming into our atmosphere, maybe from another dimension or from, I don't know, maybe they're already here. But my 1/3 of my book, I've actually gone into details about what is interacting, what is NHI, what is non-human intelligence. And, there's probably infinite species that we are going to in the future and have already been interacting with, because there's just so many different stories of different, robotic creatures and all sorts of things, like with the Charles, what's his name, the Pascagoula one, that was a robot or something, so there's just so many different species interacting with us. So when we say what is disclosure, we're not just disclosing greys or blondes or whatever. We're disclosing, I think, now they're talking about angels and demons. Well, they're things that we can't see. So there's just so much going on.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because we know there's historical evidence and present evidence of contact and ETs living on the planet. So just by bringing it up repetitively as though it hasn't yet happened helps to keep people in a trance. And perhaps people who have faith in governmental institutions or perceived authority, people who haven't yet broken that conditioning, are the ones that are most susceptible to that way of thinking. They haven't yet figured out, what? We're being hoodwinked and bamboozled.
Yeah, once upon a time back in the 50s, like there was magazines, there was TV shows, there was just so much disclosure, if you want to call it that, going on. And then I think it might have been Project Blue Book that just shut it all off, and they said everything is swamp gas, which I'm guessing swamp gas could be a real thing as well. And now, like, for example, with Christopher Bledsoe, there's what he calls angelic beings or some sort of conscious plasma balls that are out there that do interact with people. And this is what I mean. Like, there's just so much stuff interacting with humanity. And if you actually look back in the myths and legends, it was all there. It's all there as well. They were interacting with humanity for forever. It's just that, like with religion and, science, we've just like gone, oh, that stuff doesn't exist. It's like we've wiped the whole slate clean, and now we're going, what's happening?
Yeah, I'm very curious about the angel and ET crossovers, and like why oftentimes it's people who are very religious or very spiritual that seem to have these encounters. And I've heard people say that they had an angelic experience, and then that same night, quite like in the same way you did, there was a report of the UFO or some other type of thing happening simultaneously. And I'm just I don't know what to think, is what I should say.
Yeah, I've gone into great detail about that in my book as well, because I've identified within my own experience that ET contacts us, or we're more receptive to being contacted when we're in an altered state as well. So in that spirit, if you want to call it spiritual state or state of nearly asleep, where we're nearly in the astral field, we call it the astral field. Lots of people are now referring to this thing called the field. I actually identify it just as the astral field, because we can get our head around what that means then. When we're asleep, we go somewhere else, or when we meditate, we kind of like, some people have out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences. So people are, we now have the knowledge that there is something else that goes on outside of our bodies. And that's the important key here, where it's, you say, a crossover between spiritual and ET. I think ET lives there, wherever there is. So let's just call it the astral field, for want of a better word. I've just said that until we get other words, because then we can understand then that heaven is another dimension, for example, where we go when we die. So that is us crossing into another dimension, perhaps when we are almost asleep. And that's when ET goes, that person's ready, or, and there's ways that we can actually, here's a bit of guidance for you. I woke up the other night and I was like, here's a fully formed explanation. We can hear dimensions. We can hear that buzzing or humming, or perhaps there's silence, or maybe even some people even say that there's a popping sound, or some people even say with the caves that they can hear babies crying or something calling out to them. So we can hear, even they say trumpets, trumpeting sound, and we can see dimensions because we can see portals. We can see with the Our Lady of Fatima, there was colours in the whole landscape, changed colours, and that's what people are reporting with UFOs as well. So I believe that's us going into it, like the dimensions clashing or joining together, or us going into another dimension or something like that. We can sometimes see it's a cloudy thing or shimmering, or some people even report like a kind of, say, like walking through Vaseline or walking through a different density. So, and then also we can feel it as well, because how sometimes you see these beings or whatever frozen in time. They're all over the internet now, videos of things being frozen or time being altered. So sometimes people are just walking really slowly, and some people are like, wow, so those people are walking so slowly. Or perhaps even we get like a different sense of, like, we feel spiritual, or we feel in fear, or these astral projection, these sorts of things. So I think this is us crossing into other dimensions, if this makes some sort of sense. This is me just trying to guess what's happening as well, because but that all kind of came to me in the middle of the night, just as a download only a few weeks ago. So when I say about being helped, yes, I'm being helped to write this book by maybe my higher self, or other beings that are helping along with this disclosure as well, because they can't write books. They can't have podcast interviews, so they have to have somebody talking for them. So it's almost like they've chosen me to, like, you look like you're a talker. You look like you're a thinker. You go and talk for us and you tell everybody about us. So, yeah, I think that's a lot of us are coming forward now, because we're all feeling like, okay, now it's time to talk. It's kind of becoming a bit more accepted now with the US hearings and that sort of stuff too. So, disclosure's happening.
So have all of your experiences just been overtly positive?
If you want to say that, they are scary, because you've never seen these beings before. Having something in your room is scary. There, I said it. Beings from other planets, in meeting that is a scary experience. But when I started to think deeply about it, I thought, they're showing me, say the first short dark hooded guys, they're showing me they are showing me through demonstration, that they're showing me that people have telepathy or precognition, or can maneuver time somehow, or time doesn't exist. They're showing me how to fly a craft. They're showing, in the case with the grey lady, her and I would mind meld. So, they're showing me how to meditate in this sort of deep consciousness. And in that way, it's positive, because they're actually showing us through demonstration all of the tech that they've got on their craft, that they can heal people, that they use light and energy. And this is where I believe that they're helping us, and it's benevolent, because they're not harming us. They're actually demonstrating things to us that we can then take away and learn when we start thinking about it. we just only focus on the fear, we're never going to learn anything. But as soon as we start looking at what they're showing us, then that's helpful.
Interesting. So you mentioned that you were stressed as a child, and many experiencers report psychological or emotional or energetic strain. So what have been your biggest challenges, and how have you coped with it?
I think ontological shock has been something that I've had 40 years of, a bout of ontological shock lasting 40 years. But what I also realise is that there are ways to help by finding groups and finding people with similar experiences. And that's been just such a massive help to me. Finding people who allow you to talk, not just shut you off or shut you down or say this is ridiculous or quite crazy. Like, that's your own family in that. And people, unfortunately, move away from you as soon as they find out about this stuff. And that's one of these things that I've just had to deal with as well, that people just are happy to ghost you and delete you out of their life as soon as they find out about this weird ET stuff. It's not my fault. You know, no one's asked to do this. No one, you know, it's something else chose us to do this. But in my book, I've written a big section of how to find help. How do we all cope with ontological shock? How do we get through this whole disclosure thing and come out the other side more spiritual or more a better place for it? We don't want to be blowing things up. I certainly don't want us to be blowing things up. And I don't really think it's fair that the military complex represents the whole of humanity on this stuff, because 99% of the humanity is peaceful. Nobody wants wars and murder and families to disappear, and, you know, nobody wants anyone dying. I don't want to have the ET dying because I don't think that's fair, just like they don't kill us.
So with that, how do you respond to the skeptics that say that these contact experiences are, I don't know, hallucinations or delusions or something like that?
I just don't think that they've researched anything. I don't think that it's just a band-aid, isn't it? Saying that none of this exists. There's no footage, that there's no evidence. There's thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people probably have seen UFOs. There's footage everywhere. I know there's AI now, and I know there's some fakers, but really, as soon as you scratch the surface, you find that there's just a wealth of contactee books, all the way going back to George Adamski, and further, I suppose. It's anyone who says that literally there's no such thing as this has never researched. They haven't researched anything. And, you know, if you're never going to research something, you don't have a voice, I say. If you research everything and if you then tell me it doesn't exist, that's different. But if you've never researched anything and you say this stuff doesn't exist, then you don't have a voice in the subject.
Right. And like I was saying, literally the Vedas, or literally ancient hieroglyphics, there's aliens on the wall. Like, what more do you want to spark your curiosity, I guess?
Exactly. And in the end, it doesn't really matter what other people think, because I know exactly what I've been through, and I had enough of that being told that this stuff doesn't exist. And frankly, it does exist. I have my memories. I didn't need hypnotherapy. I just have my memories now, you know. That's what I've concentrated in my book. And the last part of my book I wanted to say about was, how do we learn from what we're getting shown and demonstrated? And I think that we can put that into our own spirituality. How do we learn to be telepathic, or, you know, whatever they're doing, how do we learn it? That's what I'm exploring in my book. So I've got sort of like exercises that I've found work for me, being a meditation instructor and things like that. So, and actually they told me to do meditation. I got a download saying you need to do meditation course. And I was like, well, I never thought about doing that before. So then when I started to do my meditation course, I realized this is accessing our spiritual side then.
And what's interesting is that maybe about 40 minutes before this interview, I felt very sleepy, just out of the blue. And I actually felt called to meditate. And it was more like I just kind of heard in my head, okay, get into a real receptive state so you can ask the right questions. And I was like, okay, let's do that. And so I did it, you know.
Yeah, that's it. And you're getting shown by your guides. Wow.
Yeah, nothing like that.
We all have guides.
Yeah.
Wow, cool. I believe we've got our higher self, we've got our guides, we've got ETs helping us. We've got God. You know, we've got synchronicities and coincidences that just have no reason that happen. For example, like if you're saying something and then next time you read it in a book, next time you're reading something and it confirms exactly what you thought, you know, that's a coincidence and synchronicity. And that's this is what I mean. We just don't even know what reality really is. So we're just in kindergarten.
In your imagination, do you have an idea of what let's call it the next frontier would be for experience or for information that researchers of the future will uncover and things like that?
I want to say, number one, if the whole world is imagining and believing and getting shown through entertainment that the world's going to end, we're going to bring it about. So we need to turn this around because we are powerful creators. And if we know that we can create a beautiful society of what we all want, just like the ET has, we can do that. So that's our next step, I think, is to create that society and not get manipulated and not get brainwashed and not get hypnotized by tech and every other way that they're hypnotizing us now through media and TV and all the rest of the stuff. You know, if we are aware that they're doing that, then they have no power anymore. So we don't want wars. We don't want any of this stuff. But we're getting led and by people who aren't for our best interest, you know, and that's our own people. So as a people, we have the choice to make our best life in the future for our kids and everything else. And you know what? We just have to do it because that's your responsibility for the world, is to be your best person that you can be. And none of this drugs and, drinking and falling over on the street and living homeless. You really have to work at this stuff, you know. You have to work at yourself. That's the most important thing. If I work at myself, I can't change you, but I can only change me. And I can be the best person I can be for the world. So that's your responsibility, is to work on yourself. And then that way it changes the world.
Fantastic. So, I mean, I could ask you a lot more questions, but I guess if you already gave your message to humanity, then what do you think is next for you as an author?
I will definitely be putting out the second edition, pardon me, in the next few weeks, which I say has got more memories, it's got more information that I was just downloaded with a few weeks ago. It's just going through and correcting any errors and putting more information in, because I think I was a bit shy when I first brought it out, and I just didn't want to say too much. I didn't want to frighten people. I didn't want to be, I've got a lot of information in that book, and it's worthy then of adding more information to it and making it more explanatory for people, especially people who have never thought about this sort of stuff before. That's really, it's either the people who have had their own experiences, it's good for them. It's good for people who've never had experiences to learn what other people have gone through and to find out what disclosure really is. And it's also good to learn all the exercises in the book that I've got to how to be the best person that we can individually be. So, yeah, it's kind of a book for everybody. And I'll be bringing it out on audio book as well, so people can just listen to it wherever. And maybe next year, I don't know if there's more. I mean, I know I could probably have hypnotherapy, but after 40 years of contact, I'm thinking how much more could I remember.
Fair enough. I mean, the answer to that question is you might be surprised or you might not.
Yeah. So I haven't got any plans for any more books, but just to make this one extra awesome for everybody. So wait in a couple more weeks and you'll have the updated version, everybody.
So in this current edition, which was the hardest chapter for you to write?
I really just wanted to write every memory and draw out every memory that I had so that I could discover everything in those memories and to make sure I was most authentic. So the first third of the book is all my own experiences. The second third's all about NHI. And then the third book's like the guidebook. So I call it like me, them and us sort of thing. Definitely the first one so that I could just, I didn't want to guess at anything. I just wanted to put the full truth out of what I had. So yeah, that was probably the most, not so much difficult. I was reading it the other day and I actually got a flush of embarrassment when I was reading about interacting with the tall blondes, because it was such a full-on moment, in my life that I actually, when I was reading it, I actually got a flush and I broke out in a sweat just because that was how I felt back then. And I actually reading it happened again, sort of thing. So it's like a visceral reaction to the memory, if you know what I mean. So pretty amazing.
Fantastic. Well, where can we find you?
Well, I'm online. My book's on Amazon, and I'm online on Facebook mostly. And my Facebook group, everyone's welcome to join. I post a lot of only news articles. I hate AI stuff and I hate memes and whatever. I'm like, let's just be honest and get out everything that we can and show everybody how much all this excellent evidence there is out there for this. So my Facebook group is called UFO/UAP Disclosure Australia. So everyone's welcome to go onto that and scroll through. If you don't know anything, I'll just try and save it all in there. So there's all the information in there if anyone needs to as a resource in itself. So that's, and if anyone wants to email me, my email is ufo.radio@proton.me. There you go.
Thanks so much for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. I'm glad that you popped up in the Boundless Authenticity Facebook group, because that was like, I don't know, there's just like this thing that happens to me where there's like an energetic signature to someone's picture or something that they say, and it just pops up and it feels very, I don't know, mystical to me. And I was like, okay, I need to talk to this person.
Oh, wow, that's so cool. Thank you. Oh, well, it's a pleasure to talk to everybody around the world as well, here and there. I've talked to a lot of people over in the US and Canada and the UK and Australia. So it's just so amazing just to have the message coming out.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain to get the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean?
All the big questions
questions of life. We have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity Podcast.